Well, it's insert current year, and even though Golden Sun's been gone again for at least 9 years now, it's still one of the best game series that I've ever had the pleasure of playing. So on this Golden Sunday, this fan holiday where everyone steps up to showcase their love and affection for this great series, it's time for me to play my part. Alex is not your typical villain. I always found him to be one of the more intriguing and mysterious characters among the game's cast. You were never quite certain of his motives or plans, with him seeming pleasant on the surface, yet constantly creeping around behind the scenes. He always managed to be maniacal, yet was always calm and retained his composure even in the diciest of moments. This much already set him aside from all of the tropey villains and other media that I'd grown up experiencing, and this nuance to the writing behind his character definitely makes him stand out. He wasn't even totally a bad guy, even though he was adept at manipulating events and forcing others to do his bidding one way or the other. It also wasn't even clear that he'd be the ultimate villain throughout the series, though he eventually sort of fulfills this role. He was interestingly polite, even while being rude, making surface-level efforts to not force anyone into doing anything, yet still playfully manipulating them beneath the surface, and getting them to follow his exact plan like marionettes. Encounters with him were even few and far between throughout the story. He always seemed to be just a step or two ahead of you all along your journey across Weyard. But just who was Alex, and why does all of this contribute to him being a great villain? Let's run through things from the beginning. A TLDP, too long didn't play, if you will. Or perhaps a too long ago don't remember, TLADR. Alex was a Mercury adept from Emil Village. He, along with his cousin Mia, were the last living descendants of the ancient Mercury clan, with the ability to utilize Mercury synergy. After having been trained by Mia's presumably deceased father, Alex decided to abandon his bloodline oath of devotion to Emil and set out on his own journey. Over the course of his experiences, he mastered a wide variety of powerful synergy, including levitational powers, the ability to create or summon geysers from the ground, and also synergy able to instantly teleport or warp him across small distances. Though he became a powerful adept in his own right, he'd also heard the legends of alchemy, stating that alchemy, the quintessential natural power that would return to the world if the 4 elemental lighthouses were lit, would allow for one to master the building blocks of reality, granting its wielder the unmatched power necessary to achieve dominion over the world. These legends clearly intrigued Alex, as releasing alchemy ultimately ended up being his main goal. So maniacal goal? Check. Though his goal of bringing alchemy back and gaining limitless power was a selfish one, he didn't really come off as the type of person to forcefully take over the world and control everyone. So that already sort of puts an interesting twist on his master plan. Alex simply wanted limitless power. What he would do with it, we unfortunately may never know. After meeting with Saturos and Minardi, who were researching the elemental lighthouses, he decided to team up with them and light the lighthouses with them. They realized that they needed an adept of each element though, with Alex fulfilling the Mercury adept requirement, Saturos and Minardi being Mars, and soon after, a young long-lost Venus adept named Felix, ya boy. Side note, who else really wanted to play as green-caped Felix? Just me? Throughout the story, Alex and company first light Mercury Lighthouse before Isaac's group can even get there, at which point Alex has Saturos test their power. Saturos is then defeated, which surprises Alex. With the task completed though, Alex playfully bids them adieu and sets off to the next lighthouse. Along the way to Venus Lighthouse, his group comes across a stranded young Jupiter adept named Sheba and coerces her into joining them. Once at Venus Lighthouse, Alex sends Saturos and Minardi to light the beacon with Felix and Sheba, while he heads back to the ship with Jenna and Kraden. But things don't quite go to plan once Kraden, Alex, and Jenna reach the ship docked at the peninsula of Idajima. Once the lighthouse is lit, an earthquake causes Idajima to break off from the main continent, and Saturos dies at the lighthouse holding his black orb, meaning that it's no longer possible to pilot the Lemurian ship. Alex is now stranded on a drifting island in the open sea, but he remains calm, even in the face of a giant tsunami headed straight for them, and he's the first person to awaken after the tsunami hits. He then sets off on his own to find a suitable ship to reach the remaining 2 lighthouses. Around this time, Alex must figure that the best way for the plan to continue is if he works alone from the shadows, as he chooses to not directly accompany Felix's group when they meet up with him seeking their own ship in Dyla. Felix and company end up meeting Piers, and after proving his innocence, they set off with him in his Lemurian ship, leaving behind Alex. Alex is then fortunate to meet up with Agatio and Karst, other fire adepts from Saturos and Minardi's clan, who also intend to light the remaining lighthouses with him. In Champa, Alex decides to lie in wait for Felix's group, and upon meeting them, he even tells everyone that he does not consider any of them terribly useful and/or intelligent, and that even includes his brand new teammates Agatio and Karst, as well as the deceased Saturos and Minardi. He explains that he's on no one's side, and that his only concern is to see all of the lighthouses lit, believing that Felix's group is the most capable of this responsibility. In Jupiter Lighthouse, Alex and company engage a trap to split up and conquer Isaac's group that got there first. At this point, however, Agatio and Karst realize that Alex has abandoned them and left them to do the dirty work. Seeing that Felix's party was already rushing to help out Isaac's group, Alex intervenes, realizing that should Isaac die, Felix will not be able to handle lighting the lighthouse, since he lacks the rather Alex-like characteristic of being able to discard someone no longer useful to him. He then even heals the party before allowing them to save their friends, and telling them that despite his goals, he'd rather not inflict any harm on Mia. If the player reads Alex's mind at this point in the story, they'll find that he even expresses the desire to rush to Mia's aid, showing that he does still truly care about her. Moments like this further illustrate Alex's true character. Sometimes you'd think he was clearly an enemy, then he'd betray them and aid you, and then bam, he's betrayed you again. This is ultimately enhanced by the brilliant side-switching nature of both of the original Golden Sun games, by starting off as Isaac preventing the lighthouses from being lit, then jumping to Felix and actively seeking to light them. But it also ends up lending to Alex as a character being much more interesting, as his fluid side-changing nature and moments like this happen often over the course of the 3 Golden Sun games. After fleeing Jupiter Lighthouse and now in possession of the Mars Star, Alex parts ways with Agatio and Karst, letting them deal with lighting the Mars Lighthouse in their hometown of Prox. At this point, Alex knows exactly where he needs to be when the final lighthouse is lit. The location? Mount Aleph. This will allow him to bathe in the energy of the Golden Sun as alchemy is released, granting him the power that he sought all along. He's used everyone to achieve his ultimate dream. An interesting side note here is that while it's never explicitly stated in the game, Alex probably stole Isaac's Lemurian ship to get himself to Mount Aleph in Angara, considering he parts ways with Agatio and Karst and their ship, and for some reason Isaac's ship is never seen again. After this point, Isaac and company just joined Felix's group and used their ship. Sounds to me like a bit of Grand Theft Shippo. Wow. Standing at the peak of Mount Aleph after having deceived everyone, in his ultimate plot twist moment, the final lighthouse is lit and Alex absorbs the Golden Sun, achieving what he believes to be limitless power. While this is certainly his biggest villainous moment in the games, instead of being wholly diabolical, there's still a clear humanity to Alex. It's especially noticeable in moments like these where he's speaking to himself climbing up the mountain, begging the Golden Sun to wait until he reaches the peak. He's not overly cocky here, he's genuinely worried he won't make it in time. He's not the ultimate mastermind that has taken into account every possible outcome. Instead, he's quick on his feet and able enough to make the best out of each situation that occurs. To leave things off on an even more interesting note with Alex, it's revealed that, to a degree, his master plan has gone awry, with the Wise One showing up to ruin his parade. The Wise One informs him that some of the power he should have received in the forming Golden Sun was instead put into the Mars Star with Isaac. While Alex still got nearly limitless power and nearly endless life, there are still boundaries. Alex attempts to swat away the Wise One with his newfound power, but instead he's left defeated and humiliated in the dirt. The game's ultimate villain got the power he wanted and still achieved a mighty feat, yet the script's even been flipped on him too. He's been toppled by his own hubris. We then watch as Alex tumbles into the earth atop Mount Aleph, leaving the aftermath and his survival, or death, a burning question in our minds. 30 years later, in Golden Sun Dark Dawn, his story continues. The player is now in the unique position of exploring the completely changed world of Weyard, now that alchemy's been infused within it. And as it turns out, Alex survived the Golden Sun incident, and has had 30 years to explore and achieve many feats, and as you might expect, we know very little about his endeavors during this time. Though many fans were unhappy with Dark Dawn as a follow-up sequel in the Golden Sun series, I don't have much of a problem with it, and I will say that one of the coolest aspects of it is once again thanks to Alex. While exploring the ancient kingdom of Ayutthaya, Matthew and company begin to learn about a mysterious Mercury adept that came across the kingdom 20 years earlier, and was able to restart an artifact known as the Alchemy Well, eschewing a new era of prosperity for the once fallen kingdom. This man, as you can later deduce, is likely to have been Alex. It turns out that Alex had come across the kingdom, spending his time there masked and only revealed his face to someone he entered a relationship with, a woman named Verity. Soon after, he abandoned Ayutthaya to continue journeying across Weyard, leaving Verity behind. Though he was likely unaware, Verity had become pregnant with his son, and passed away soon after giving birth. Alex's child later joins your party as a Mercury adept named Amity. His name is even pretty close to a combination of both Alex and Verity. This explorative backstory for Alex that the player builds while journeying through Weyard, figuring out what's been happening over the past 30 years, is an incredibly fun way to learn more about him and his character, while still leaving many blanks and keeping him mysterious. I even love the fact that you finally get to use a character just like him on your team, in Amity. I loved this about Dark Dawn, and I love how they managed to work this into the overall story. In my opinion, it's a great continuation of the character that we knew and loathed throughout the first 2 Golden Sun games. Within this 30-year time span, Alex also found himself inducted into the High Emperor of Tuaparang's Circle of Elites, and was granted a role alongside 2 of their strongest commanders, Blados and Chalice. He was given the codename Arcanus, or Ace in the original Japanese version. Even his codename signifies his importance to the organization and the overall story of Dark Dawn and any potential sequels. Whether it was the High Emperor's orders or a plan concocted all on his own, once again, exactly 30 years later, we have Alex manipulating Isaac's bloodline to do his bidding, this time in Matthew. The Tuaparang goal of activating the ancient Apollo lens can only occur once both the Alchemy Forge and Well have been activated, one of which he'd already done in years prior. Letting Matthew restart the forge to help nearby villages, Alex then manipulates Volacek, the leader of Morkel, into unsealing an ancient machine called the Alchemy Dynamo, and triggering an event known as the Grave Eclipse. Once Volacek realizes he's been tricked and his people are now suffering due to the massive solar eclipse that's occurring, and shadow creatures slaughtering villagers and townsfolk all around the continent, he steals the blue orb from Blados and throws it to Matthew, hoping that Matthew will be able to use it against the Tuaparang. Yet once again, this was also a part of Alex's plan. This deception was also twofold. By activating the Grave Eclipse, they managed to trigger the unsealing of the Apollo lens, which was built to combat it. And with that, Matthew and company will now do whatever it takes to activate the lens and stop the eclipse, once again furthering Alex's aims and doing exactly what he wanted them to do all along. Alex then approaches the Emperor of Sana, Unan, and instructs him to give the red orb to Matthew, which goes all according to plan. Atop Apollo Sanctum at the end of the game, Alex informs Matthew's party of the arrival of Blados, Chalice, and the Tuaparang Adepts. He then seemingly betrays them, telling them he knows their secrets of being aligned with the ancient Umbra clan, and thus they're not really Tuaparang soldiers because of it. By doing this, he prevents them from using the lens for their own aims. He also later expresses concern for Matthew, telling him that if he activates the Apollo lens himself, he'll die. After the lens is fired and ends the eclipse as Alex ultimately wanted, we don't know what happens next as we've reached the end of the story of Dark Dawn. It's unclear as to what Alex's ultimate new plan will further entail, but someday I hope that we find out. The biggest of these theories is that the Synergy Vortices, the ones plaguing the Goma region of Weyard, and also including the Morning Moon seen at the end of the game, the actual issues that were responsible for jump-starting the entire story of Dark Dawn, well, it seems it's possible that they're once again all caused by Alex. After setting out for Patcher's place in the beginning of the game, it's possible to talk to Isaac by walking up to the front of the rocks that he's atop. After talking to him a second time, he states that he believes that someone is targeting the Wise One with an absolute hatred. Judging by Alex's rather humiliating defeat by the Wise One at the end of the Lost Age, Alex is surely a likely candidate. This could have potential ramifications for the plot of any future Golden Sun sequels, with Alex seeking to get revenge upon the Wise One in any way possible. Though he was ultimately granted what seems to be eternal youth and near limitless power, Alex continues to strive to unlock the ancient mysteries of Weyard and further lead humanity to new world-altering heights, surely to end up punctuating the annals of history. Alex throughout the series has always remained a complicated shade of gray, bad but with good qualities, an eloquently crafted villain. And while I don't particularly think that anyone is poorly written in Golden Sun, I do wish that a lot of characters had received a bit more fleshing out and development across the 3 games. This includes the Wise One, who is definitely up there as far as interesting characters, yet we're just left with far too many blanks with him. While it seems that he was originally created by adepts to monitor the seal on alchemy and take sort of a careful protector role, he doesn't seem to have much of a say of his own, and he ends up ultimately being a little less interesting, I think. The Wise One also never directly appears in Dark Dawn. Alex, however, even with his much more limited screen time than most characters throughout the story, always manages to leave a lasting impact. Thus why I find him to be the most interesting character in the Golden Sun series. Plus, there's also the fact that his portrait hair looks like his hair's teal green, while his actual sprite art hair is blue. Pure badass. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, do me a solid and slash the thumbs up. Get subscribed for more Fire Emblem and old school GBA goodness like this. And also make sure to follow us on Twitter for any news and updates. You can also join our Discord if you want to have further discussion beyond this video. And thanks as always to our amazing patrons who help to make content like this possible. Happy Golden Sunday, everyone, and may the golden sun rise again someday. Until next time, my friends.